It says we're live, and we're live. Good evening, everyone. Welcome to a Prime Minister's Questions Response stream. Yes, PMQs? Yeah. I watched this earlier. It was, interesting. Oh, wait. Well, that was poorly timed. That's usually saved for the fishing streams. Obligatory yawn, my sincerest apologies. Today was frustrating for PMQs. It was frustrating because they're still on the same subject. Because they're opposed, they must continue to answer or ask the same questions to get the exact same responses. Which I find to be quite bothersome because they're not getting anywhere. And because of that, I can't do anything about it. I'm just annoyed. Yeah, it's annoying. But anyway, we shall begin, because I want to do other things this evening. I do apologise. And that's why I'm starting a little early by 4 minutes. Yes. And we shall, well, I should just prove to you that it was quite meh. Hello to Gemma Deering, Karma, Riley, I'm going to say Riley, that's it. Grace, Great Sky Troll Anti-Drama, Discanar, Cyrene, Mazzy May, Nefa Beth, hope you're well.
To the Prime Minister.
Well, that's quiet.
We start with questions.
Oh, and yes, we have another sign language person here, yes. Should I just put the paper pervert over them anyway? Just, hang on, let me just move him over, He's not here yet, but we don't need that. We don't need it.
The Prime Minister with Catherine West. Catherine West.
Question number one, Mr. Speaker.
Why are they doing with this sign thing? It's
Mr. Speaker, I know the thoughts of the whole House will be with the Honourable Member for Bolton South East. I'm sure members from across the House will want to join me in wishing her a speedy recovery. Mr. Speaker, this morning I had meetings with ministerial colleagues and others in addition to my duties in this House. I shall have further such meetings later today.
Catherine West.
Mr. Speaker, could I associate myself with those kind remarks on behalf of my honourable friend from Bolton? And my constituents are reeling from the 9% contraction of the economy since March of this year.
I wonder why that was. Only 9% though, I'm impressed.
Unemployment has skyrocketed and joblessness in Haringey is the highest in the capital. Unfortunately, we are at the same time facing the idea that there could be a congestion tax forced onto 4 million extra Londoners by this government. These Londoners already facing the double whammy of COVID and the double whammy of financial ruin. Will the Prime Minister please immediately stop the imposition of this dreadful plan? I look forward to his answer.
It's interesting to hear Labour talk about not wanting to introduce more taxing. Because both parties are just as bad at it, really, aren't they?
Well, Mr. Speaker, I must respectfully inform the Honourable Lady that the current Mayor of London had effectively bankrupted TfL before coronavirus had even hit and left a massive black hole in its finances, and any need to make up that deficit is entirely down to him. It is entirely his responsibility. Any expansion of the congestion charge or any other measure taken to improve the finances of TfL are entirely the responsibility of the bankrupt current Labour Mayor of London.
So, when it comes to TfL tariffs and all that, the Mayor of London was asked to introduce a ticket price, or to make people under the age of 18 pay for tickets. Something which, I'll be honest, I'm okay with. Because if you're not going to get it from taxes, people should pay their fares. Simple as that, really. But Sadiq turned it down. Instead, he wants to just lock London down again. One of the most powerful things about London is its financial sector. And it can't save London if this happens.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, people of the length and breadth of the country have made many sacrifices over the last few months to try to suppress COVID-19. But infection rates are increasing fast, and Buckinghamshire may soon find itself in Tier 2. Can my right honourable friend tell the people of my Aylesbury constituency how long we'd be expected to stay there, what additional help there'd be for local businesses, and crucially, what the route out would be?
I can give you the answer to all of that. There will be very little financial support, and there will be no route out, because they're still arguing over which route's the right one.
Thank you. Well, I hope reassure my honourable friend by telling him that the incidence in the Vale of Aylesbury is in fact less than half the England average, and the way forward for the Vale of constituents in the Vale of Aylesbury and everywhere else is for everyone to keep following the guidance, observing the new restrictions, but obviously washing hands, wearing a face covering in enclosed spaces, and keeping a sensible distance, Mr. Speaker.
We come to the Leader of the Opposition.
What I don't know, a bit of a copy-paste answer, but okay.
The Right Honourable Keir Starmer.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Can I thank the Prime Minister for his remarks about the Honourable Member for Bolton South East. Prime Minister, how does an area which goes into Tier 3 restrictions get out of those restrictions?
This is a pretty obvious question, and even obvious answer. When the R rate's below 1. That should be the answer, by the way.
Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, the simplest and most effective way for areas to get out of those restrictions is, of course, to get the R down to 1 or below, and I'm very pleased to say that some areas are already having a considerable effect with the measures that they're taking.
Yes, done.
Before it pops up, D. Higgins, thank you very much for the incredibly generous $14.99 donation. That's very kind of you. They're still going to argue over this, and it's going to keep... Basically, the reason he's asked this is because he's leading the Prime Minister, and it's going to get quite annoying quite fast.
Mr. Speaker, can I press the Prime Minister on that answer? If the infection rate R in a Tier 3 area has not come below 1, will it be possible in any circumstances for that area to come out of Tier 3 if the R hasn't come below 1?
So the answer should be no at this point, shouldn't it? That's the answer. Because they're obsessed over the... how many people are infected? Yeah, it's a case of how many people can someone infect with it. That's what they want to get down. And I get it. But if I'm going by current numbers... This current government's borrowing is already over $2 trillion. If we go into a national lockdown like everyone is pushing, it's going to get incredibly painful very fast once this is all over, if it's over. And I keenly await them actually, when they do this, when this is all over, if they actually bloody well give the power, back. Don't keep it, because, oh boy, it would just lend additional credence to the content of Dave Cullen at the moment, Computing Forever, who is very much on that. It's very V for Vendetta, isn't it? Yeah, feels oddly, yeah.
Mr. Speaker, obviously the R is one of the measures that we look at, and we'll take a decision based on a number of things, including the R, but also, of course, rates of infection, rates of admission to hospital, and other data. But the most important thing is for areas that do go into Tier 3, and I'm very grateful to local leadership in the areas.
I should say some areas today have gone into will be going into Tier 3 lockdown. Manchester is the one. Andy Burnham, former Labour MP, now Mayor of Manchester, he was against it. He said he wouldn't do it. He wanted financial reassurances to make sure that people were safe and that they wouldn't suffer. But they're going to. And I'll be honest, I'm pretty sure Boris would have deployed the military or used the police to make it happen. And that's not a good sign for Boris. That's not a good look. Many people up there in North Nottinghamshire as well, which is unfortunate for one of my mates, they have an issue right now. It's going to be really, really messy.
That have gone into Tier 3 because it's the right thing for them to do, the right thing for their constituents, the right thing to save lives. When they're able to make progress, and of course they will come out of Tier 3. And as he knows full well, the measures that are put in place are reviewed every 28 days.
To address Karma's question, would they try again another lockdown? Possibly. Sage have said if we don't initiate or implement some kind of lockdown, the current infection rate would be and death toll would be phenomenal over Christmas when it will peak again. It's such a difficult position now for the government, and I think they can't win even if they do a circuit breaker. They can't win because then areas that aren't affected are being punished. My area, we're fine. Really are. The R rate is low. We're fine. We shouldn't have to be put in a lockdown. We should be allowed to keep our economy going so people who are self-employed or people who are small business don't suffer. But many will if it happens again. And I know this for a fact. We can't risk that.
Stop.
Mr. Speaker, I'm now confused by the Prime Minister's answer. If it's not the R rate under 1, what is it? Because millions of people want to know the answer to that question, because millions of them are in Tier 3 and millions more are likely to go into Tier 3. They really need to know. And Prime Minister...
So he has a point. Boris did give more than one answer then, which is a bit of an issue, because all he had to do was say when the R rate is below 1. But Boris being Boris, he loves to talk.
On Friday, the Chief Scientific Officer said Tier 3 on its own certainly isn't enough to get the R rate below 1. On the same day, the Prime Minister...
That's because many believe that the government's means-assessed system is ineffective. I tend to think it is effective because it deals with the issue in the area. If the infection rate continues to go up in that area, that isn't the fault of the rest of the country, is it? So perhaps dealing with it where it is the problem is the better idea. But then it's a really difficult one because Sage have said otherwise. But the problem is, Sage will say otherwise because they don't have to consider the economy. The government is in the most impossible position because they've got to consider the economy as well as the people. And they know this because they can't risk putting everyone in the chaos. As a libertarian, it kills me to say this. If people in one area aren't at risk and can work, then working can help prop up the national economy. Yes, which is why London must continue to work. Sadiq wants to put it in lockdown with minimal boroughs affected or with the R rate high. No joke. He wants to lock all, is it 31 or 32 boroughs of London down for 1 or 2? Are you mad? That city, with its finance sector, does so much for this country's economy. And in this weird state, it was a weird twist, he doesn't care. Yet he is also begging for money from the government. It's like, I'm sorry, but the money is in your city, and you're the one trying to stop it from earning. The world economy is suffering enough, and they've got to do their jobs.
Himself said there was only a chance of getting infection rates down. This goes to the heart of the issue in Greater Manchester and elsewhere. Because the widespread fear, Prime Minister, is that Tier 3 is the worst of all worlds. It brings
No, it's basically just what lockdown was before. That's all it is. It's just what lockdown was for those 3 months that we all suffered. It's just that. But and the annoyance is it's until the R rate comes down.
Significant economic harm without getting the virus sufficiently under control to exit Tier 3. So instead of being a solution, Tier 3 is a gateway to weeks and weeks, more likely months and months of agony, from which there's no likely exit. Can the Prime Minister not see the problem if there isn't a clear exit?
Sorry, Mr. Speaker, I've made it absolutely clear that a part of the country going into Tier 3 is only in there for 28 days. We will review it after 28 days, and areas that have gone into Tier 3, I believe, are already making progress, and areas where there are restrictions in place are also showing signs of progress. We are pursuing, Mr. Speaker, a local, a regional approach, which is the sensible approach for this country. That's what the epidemiology supports. It's what the Deputy Chief Medical Officer supported last night. And again, I want to thank a local leadership in Merseyside, in Lancashire, actually in London and West Midlands and elsewhere for what they are doing. And I may say that it is a bit incoherent of the right honourable gentleman opposite to attack local lockdowns when he wants to plunge the whole country, back into a damaging lockdown for weeks on end, and he has no clue about how he would propose to get the country out of that, does he?
So the circuit breaker idea is that it would last 2 weeks. That's what they believe, and it would buy 28 days before the infections start to go up again. That's the premise. I don't support it. I can't support that, because 2 weeks, we're just stuck in limbo. I can't support that because we now know people are affected more in other areas of the country, not my area. I shouldn't have to lose my work again because of this. And I know it sounds selfish, but really, I pay taxes. Come on. I'm paying into the system. I'm trying to do my bit at least. And you are doing everything you can to just not allow it, which is really frustrating. The circuit breaker idea, that is. And it isn't the worst idea. It really isn't. But for that to be applicable, the majority of the country would have to be affected, I think. Not the entire country affected by a circuit breaker because of a number of areas. It's not right. And it would start at 2 weeks. You're quite right, Gemma. You're absolutely right. It would get worse when they realise, oh, look, it doesn't work. I can't imagine why, but I just noticed the temperature's going down and the infection's going up. Wow, I wonder why that is.
Mr.
Speaker, I appreciate there's going to be a review every 28 days, but if the R rate hasn't come below 1, then the infection rate is still going up, and the numbers are going up, and the admissions are going up, and the numbers in hospital are going up, and the deaths are going up. Is the Prime Minister seriously saying that he would take a Tier 3 area out of Tier 3 with the R above 1? I don't think so.
Well, he hasn't said that, and he never stated it, so I don't know why you think that's some kind of cheap point-scoring gotcha. You didn't get him on shit. What's wrong with you? I'll be honest, Boris is absolutely fucking up these answers, I will agree. He's just babbling, and it sucks because he could just give such clear answers, but he's Boris Johnson. But you haven't got him on anything here.
Let me spell out what this means. On Friday, thousands of people in Greater Manchester, taxi drivers, pub and hospitality workers, people working in betting shops, the self-employed and freelancers, will either be out of work or face significant pay cuts. That's the reality on Friday in Greater Manchester. But their rent and their mortgage won't be lower, their food and their heating bills won't be lower, and that could last for months. Why can't the Prime Minister and the Chancellor understand this? Stop bargaining with people's lives, stop dividing communities, and provide the support that...
To do so, the support you're referencing would cost effectively £1 billion a day, like it has done for the last 200 days, which is why the government has borrowed over 200 billion since this has happened. You realise that to pay that off with the interest and all that, the budget deficit is going to go up, which means in turn more borrowing with less money available in the budget. Do you not understand basic economics here, Keir? It's why they can't just do this. They can't. Because you don't understand the economics, and we know this because you're still harping from a position of New Blair, New Labour even, or even Corbyn politics of borrow, 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 borrow. Oh wait, we've got no money left even with the interest we pay back. Oh, we should borrow some more then. We'll be fine. Because we can just tax people, even though the very first question asked was about, essentially an anti-tax question.
It's needed in Manchester.
Mr. Speaker, I'm very proud that this government has already given Greater Manchester £1.1 billion in support for business £200 million in extra unring-fenced funding, £50 million to tackle infections in care homes, £20 million for tests and trace, another £22 million for local response that we announced yesterday. And yesterday, the Mayor of Greater Manchester...
I would just say the numbers he gave aren't that impressive, just saying.
Manchester was offered a further £60 million, which he turned down, Mr. Speaker.
Yeah, the money's just going to go straight to the local councils instead of going to the mayor.
With no encouragement, I may say, to support from the right honourable gentleman. So I can tell the House today, Mr. Speaker, is that that cash will be distributed to the boroughs of Greater Manchester. And I want to thank my honourable and right honourable colleagues across the House for Haywood and Middleton, from Bolton North West, from Bolton North East, from Bury South, Bury North, Cheadle, Lee, Altrincham and Sale West, and Hazel Grove for the support that they have given in this matter, Mr. Speaker.
This is a prime...
Gemma, so the money comes from gilts. It's where the government can borrow money on something by giving somebody a fancy ticket. And it's a guarantee. We borrow the money from the banks, or from investors, I guess, and essentially we pay back the interest over a set period of time. At the end of that period of time, though, we have to pay the entire balance off. Which is why, when the Conservatives took power in 2010, this was a big deal. Because the budget deficit was huge. Because of the interest we were paying on loans. Because of 13 years of utterly reckless Labour spending. It's why austerity was introduced. It was why the Conservatives found a way to reduce the amount of money being spent on state welfare, which in turn became a more invasive procedure, especially to those who are disabled. But a necessary one because of what Labour did. We had to make sure people were not, as Labour made it so, living essentially on the government for free. But the problem with that was we couldn't afford that. No government can afford that. So it shouldn't have happened. But it did because Labour didn't know how to bloody well do anything with money. And as referenced in the chat, chaos. Politicians never have to balance a checkbook. Well, the Conservatives had to get the budget deficit down. And it took them... They thought they could get it done in 5 years. They were wrong. It took nearly 10 years. But because of coronavirus, that deficit is going to get bigger. Borrowing, by the way, from the government never went down, though. Just the budget deficit changed. And I keenly await the day when people finally find out where coronavirus came from, and everyone just sends them a nice little bill. This is what you're doing to pay off and be good with the rest of the world. I hope you have many, many trillions in the bank, because this shit's about to get very expensive for you. You'll see our debt next to the word Gucci.
Prime Minister can pay £7,000 a day for consultants on track and trace, which isn't working, that can find £43 million for a garden bridge that was never built, but he can't find £5 million for the people of Greater Manchester. I really think the Prime Minister's crossed a Rubicon here, not just with the miserly way that he's treated Greater Manchester, but the grub it, take it or leave it way these local deals are being done. It's corrosive to public trust, to pit region against region, mayor against mayor, council against council, asking them to trade away their businesses and jobs. We need a one-nation approach.
No. No. First of all, we're not one nation, we're four. Unless you're saying only England should obey this one, because Wales have their own way of doing it. They want to go into a Tier 3 lockdown cause. Scotland are essentially doing a circuit breaker, but extending it by another week. Right? And Northern Ireland, I'm not too sure about, because no one talks about Stormont. Ever.
Replace these endless local battles with clear national criteria and proper support for jobs.
I think the criteria is actually fairly obvious. You have Tier 1, Tier 2 and Tier 3. Green, amber, red. How is that not clear to you? How do you get out? Simple. The R rate's below 1. Then you can go to amber, which gives you a bit more freedom. And then green. I'd like the one beyond green, where you don't have the power to simply lock down the entire country. Herding people is not, it's not really my thing, you know. Just mishandling it and lying to the WHO is enough to make them liable. I tend to agree.
Labour's motion this afternoon would do that. Why won't the Prime Minister support it?
Hang on. I need to quickly go and check, because I don't know if that passed or not, but we will go check. Let's have a look. Politics. I do apologise, but that was happening this evening, I believe. Where is it? Politics. Brexit. Raina calls someone scum because she's a twat. No reference to it. Okay, let's try one more. Let's have another look. Note that's some Rudy Giuliani nonsense. No one cares. Infection rates. No, there's nothing about it. It clearly didn't go very far then, I guess. Although it wouldn't. The Conservatives hold a majority, so they wouldn't have to worry too much. Alright, carrying on.
Mr. Speaker, I'm proud of the support that we've given, the One Nation Conservative support that we've given to the entire country. £200 billion in support for jobs and livelihoods across the whole of the country.
Before he answers, because it's a load of nonsense. Lulubell, my town's also listed as yellow, but we're low as well. We have like two infections in the entire constituency. That's insane. Well, two that we know of anyway. I got an alert telling me about one, and the other one was I found on a Google search. Asking me, if the Queen does not approve of what Parliament is doing, can she override their decisions? She can step in sometimes. Mostly she will give permission to many things. There isn't much she I'll be honest, she won't. I know it's hypothetical, but I should just say for the sake of it, the Queen will never get involved in politics ever, other than to abolish Parliament for a recess or for election. Dissolve, Parliament for elections, and to then open the next session of Parliament. She won't get involved.
Already a further £9.9 billion now for the Jobs Support Scheme. It is this government that has cut VAT for business, deferred business rates. There is no other country in Europe, Mr. Speaker, where so much support, so much help has been given to the population to get through this crisis, and we will continue to do that. But I think it is the height of absurdity, Mr. Speaker, that he stands up and attacks the economic consequences of the measures that we're obliged to take across some parts of the country, when he wants to turn the lights out with a full national lockdown, taking kids... that was his policy last week anyway, wasn't it? Perhaps he could confirm that's still his policy. Is that what he wants to do?
Here's Starmer.
Mr. Speaker, at his press conference yesterday, the Prime Minister produced heat maps across the country showing the infection rate up in all ages across all regions, and particularly showing regions that have been in the equivalent of Tier 2 restrictions for weeks, if not months, moving into Tier 3. Now, if they're moving into Tier 3, Tier 2 hasn't worked. Because if Tier 2 worked, they should be going to Tier 1. So Tier 2 goes to Tier 3. Tier 3 has no end, because there's no prospect or confidence in the R rate coming below 1. And I do not believe that a Tier 3 region will come out of those restrictions unless R is below 1 and whilst numbers are still going up.
I agree.
So we now have a stark choice. And by the way, Prime Minister, Cornwall is the only place, possibly with the Isle of Wight, where the infection rate today is less than Greater Manchester when it went into local restrictions. So this idea that some areas are immune is wrong. So there's a stark choice. Carry on with the Prime Minister's approach.
No one's saying they're immune, only that areas are affected differently, and that's just the perfect pause phase.
Which will lead to weeks and weeks and months of prolonged agony in all your constituencies for millions of people in Tier 2 and 3 with no exit, or put in place a 2 to 3 week time-limited circuit break to break the cycle and bring the virus back under control.
Lol, you think you can control a virus? You're precious.
Wales...
Especially when there's no treatment for it, beyond a generic steroid and air.
Wales, Northern Ireland and Scotland in part have chosen that path. With half-term starting this Friday, this may be the last opportunity for the Prime Minister to put in place an effective circuit break. The Prime Minister was too slow in the first phase of this pandemic.
No, he wasn't. Shut up with that bullshit. Okay. When the first one hit, we were not affected as badly. So when we were affected, we couldn't get the supplies anyway because all the supplies had been bought up. So we had to turn to outsourcing, getting PPE, for example, to borrow money. What are you expecting the government to do? Prepare for it by taking out a bunch of loans. You nutking futs. Are they supposed to get any kind of PPE sorted and put to one side? Makes no sense. We should always, of course, have supplies, of course. But there was not a case of being ill-prepared, because it just happened and that was it. Just because other countries were being affected doesn't mean the rest, all of us, we as a nation should then suddenly react and immediately insulate ourselves. I know others would say otherwise. I tend to disagree because he's framing this as if the government was ill-prepared, but that was never the case. It wasn't about being prepared, it was about how quickly it impacted us.
He's being too slow again. We cannot repeat this mistake. Will he act in the public interest and take the opportunity to put in place a circuit break this Friday?
The answer is going to be no, I think.
Mr. Speaker, we will do whatever it takes to get this country through the crisis, with or without the support of the right honourable gentleman opposite. And I may say that I think that his
Just
policy,
show you
I've
something.
explained why I don't believe that his policy is the right one for the country, because it would involve closing schools, it would involve shuttering businesses, it would, with all the psychological, the emotional damage that lockdown of that kind
Her responses are, they're good. Yeah, I like it.
brings. He can't say how many circuit breakers he thinks would be necessary. He can't say how long they would.
That's because it would be quite a lot, because it'd only buy 28 days. So essentially, one every other month. It's affecting the areas the first lockdown are protected. The drop in summer was predicted, as all COVID diseases are seasonal. Google moderator team deleted that. Oh, blimey. I'm sorry, Billy Subs Grant. That wasn't me, I promise you. But I do want a screenshot of that. I'm going to take a screenshot. I can promise you that wasn't me. There is a very heated discussion about the seasons when it comes to illnesses. I will agree. Other illnesses as well, for that matter. But that's not to say they can't affect you year-long round. Like a cold.
Go on. He can't say how much damage they would do to the UK economy and to people's mental health, Mr. Speaker. We, on the other hand, want to go on with our commonsensical approach, which is a local and a regional approach, keeping kids in school, keeping our...
So, education's the one that's kind of got the biggest infection rate. But the government is adamant. They are adamant that schools must remain open. It's a tricky one, because one of my sisters works in a school, and, like, for example, they're trying to deal with, oh, jeez, that's happened again. They're trying to, I'm sorry, Billy, I don't know what's going on there. You've been deleted by the Google moderator team again. I don't know what that's about. But the problem they have is, like, for example, dinner ladies have to take the meals from the kitchen, but they have to have people work within cells within a kitchen, because they're small. And the kids get fed at certain times to be out at certain times, but that means some kids aren't getting their lunch till 2 p.m, an hour before they go home. They're going hungry for so long because of this system. It's very difficult. I don't understand how they can keep pushing this, because a lot of these schools also don't allow anything that's like a packed lunch, and it's like, what are you doing? I will say, for the sake of it, Billy, I don't condone the Google moderator team deleting your comments. I firmly believe in civil discourse from all. All opinions should be heard, and the fact you're deleting his messages proves a very fundamental point, that you do not support free speech. He's not promoting a conspiracy theory here. In fact, nothing he has said is a conspiracy. It's a position. So stop deleting messages. Unless you're going to start liking my streams and shilling them as well, Google. Kindly do one.
economy moving, because that is the way to get the whole of our country through this crisis together, so that we all, and particularly those regions that are now, alas, under Tier 3 restrictions, all the regions of the country bounce back strongly together, Mr. Speaker.
I think the main... Oh, hang on. One of the major reasons they are not pushing for a circuit breaker is to try and get them to... is to try and keep the economy from suffering any more than it already has this year. Because you're going to need it after this. It's going to have to be repaired. And that means, I'll be honest with you, this man here is going to have one of the biggest uphill struggles so he doesn't lose his job, because he will have to introduce austerity. And that sucks, but I think he will have to. Hey, little Ease, hope you're well. How was my meat? Was I thick and delicious?
Let's head up to Chester.
Yeah, no, we're not doing that. So the paper pervert isn't on camera. It's just him. He's doing audio. So I'll give you a choice. Do you want me to do a question of his, even though she looks like she's having a cigarette? Or shall we not, because the coward isn't there articulating his views? And by the way, him smiling is a very odd occurrence. So if you want to see him, want me to answer one of his questions, I will. But otherwise, I will not. Because honestly, this is annoying. You're a punish anyone. Oh, you ate all the sausages. I'm glad to hear you enjoyed them. Oh, I hope you enjoyed them. Did you share any with family? But do let me know about the what you think about this. Whether I should do one more question or not. Because I'm quite happy to leave it, because it's just this picture, which is just disappointing. I could put him there. It seems okay. Okay, well, no one's answered, so I'm going to go ahead and say, essentially, he wants national lockdown and blah, 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 blah. Tories are bad, blah, blah, blah. That was actually all of it. So, I'm going to end, because I have to do a few other things this evening. Thank you very much for joining. I'm very sorry. Very, very sorry to... oh, okay. That was because I tabbed across, wasn't it? Very sorry to... oh, what was your name again? To Billy Subsgrant. I'm very, very sorry that you lost... that you got hit like that. I really am. I am going to... do other things. Thanks for joining. Thank you for the donation. That was very generous. And I'll see you all on Friday for the political recap stream with Trups. Good night.